they can take it off.
And then how do we get it, Ellen?
That is a very good question. That will be my next question to ask Josh at the temple about how we actually,
Okay.
get it. I don't exactly know, but hopefully that will be not too hard. I think he said something about being on YouTube, so maybe.
All right.
Arnie says the recording comes to me and I will send it to you in April. Fantastic. So Elaine, for a small price, I will let you see it.
Okay. I'll give you $1.
Okay.
Better she show you than teach you out of it.
Thanks, Arnie. Thank you. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you very
leaving.
much.
Thanks very much. Okay.
Hopefully my PowerPoint will run when I share the screen and life will be good.
Okay, and so hopefully in a few moments, whoever else might be coming on will come on. It's early. It's still 6:52. So that's okay. All right, so should I show and tell what I made?
Oh, yes.
Okay, it's not done. April, I'm counting on you when I come home. I have people in every city. Okay, so there it is.
Oh,
In wheels.
lovely.
And then, so I have to quilt it, and I'm just machine quilting it. And they suggested just straight lines, if I can make straight lines. So I started doing that, and they said not to do it in the ditch because that.
Because why? You're frozen.
She froze again. Yeah. Oh, well.
And an update on the story we first brought you last week. The family.
Yeah, frozen.
You
Definitely.
froze again.
I know.
Why did
So
they not want you to stitch in the ditch?
Yeah, she thought it would be too hard for me.
Oh,
So you can see that the line is right here on the outside 1/4 inch.
yeah.
It's not, I think it would probably have looked better in the ditch, but for
Yeah.
whatever reason, I just kind of followed their instructions. Oh, God. All right, this is not going to work. Every time I talk, I think I'm going to freeze.
I can hear you talking, but your picture freezes.
Okay, well, as long as the picture freezes, that's okay. So, and then they talked about sewing, this in a blind stitch so that you don't see any of the stitches.
Yeah, that's fine. But have you completed your quilting?
No, because I don't have a machine. I was borrowing everybody's machine. So when
Okay.
I get home,
You should do the quilting before you do your binding
Mhm.
because it tends to spread and move and kind of shift as you quilt.
well, it was interesting because they said, as one of the wonderful quilters said, she said, "Oh, you've got a little pucker there." That was like a no-no. I was like, yes.
So if I come to your house and pick it up and look at the back and see a pucker, would you do me a favor and slap my hand?
Okay. They were nice. They were being nice. But,
Yes.
but anyway.
Yeah.
Her
That,
first attempt at this.
yeah, that binding being machine sewn on through all the layers though is going to hold things there. So if you have like a spread or stretch as you quilt, it's going to come over and it's going to all end up at where that binding is. So may want to take the binding off first, finish your quilting, and then we'll put the binding back on.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Just a small cart before the horse, that's all.
Okay.
And as I say, we're not entering into any contest, so if you want to go, maybe on the next one.
Okay. All right. Okay. We will see how it goes. But yeah, that's interesting. Everybody, again, has a different style.
Yeah, definitely. And it's hard, when people do things a certain way, they get used to it and they, that's the method that works best for them. And so when they see other ways, they think, oh no, that's not how I want you to do this or what. And then you're like, well, that's not what the other person said. What do I do?
April, do you have a machine that you can actually do the quilting on? Do you have an arm for that?
I don't have a long arm quilter. I do it on my regular home sewing machine.
You do?
I do, yeah.
Alright.
For table runners and
All things, yeah.
table covers, those
Okay.
kinds of things, that size and up to about the size of a baby quilt, I will do on my machine. The quilt that I donated to the temple, I did on my sewing machine.
Oh, you'll have to show me how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that difficult. Hi, Erica.
Hi, April, how you doing?
Good, good. It's not that difficult on a regular machine to do the quilting with the smaller pieces. It
Sure.
becomes a real challenge when you're even a twin size.
Oh, I would never attempt it on my machine at
You
home.
just
Yeah.
don't have a big enough opening to get all that stuff through, which is why the long arms are so nice.
Sure.
But for these little things, it's not bad. I'm
Good.
still learning the quilt as you go method. I'm not sure I like that. Quilt each square as you go.
Oh,
And then you join them together.
all right. I've never done that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like that.
April, where do you get your material?
For some stuff, I go to Joann's.
Yeah,
Most stuff I go online.
you do it on, yeah, because there's no place.
Fabric.com has great prices and really good quality.
Yeah.
And Colchester Fabrics, they actually have a store in Connecticut, which is not too far from where I grew up, but they also have an online presence. Colchester Fabrics is just beautiful stuff
Okay.
you never find at Joann's. Um,
Well, I purchased this at, they have a craft, local crafters group where we are. And I
Yeah.
do not belong. These people are very, very talented. But I bought this at their craft fair. It is a quilted casserole.
Oh, pretty.
Yeah,
And I thought, oh, maybe that's something I can, it's not real big.
yeah,
Might be kind of fun to learn how to do. I don't know.
sure.
For me, everything looks difficult.
Well, you can change that. We just have to get used to diving in head first.
I think so. But anyway, it was kind of neat. So I bought it, but,
I have another quilted casserole holder pattern that I like, and it's super easy because you buy quilted material, two-sided quilted material already. And they,
Throw it up then, yeah.
it's kind
Oh,
of a
that's
little bit of a
nice.
treat. Yeah, yeah.
well, I will definitely, that'd be my choice.
Yes, it does have a good deal of hand sewing, but even the hand sewing on it could be done by machine.
Okay,
So it's not bad.
okay.
So there's 4 of us. The last I heard, I was the 10th person to sign up. I don't know how many total we're expecting. It might be that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's
Only just 7 o'clock, so we can wait.
7. We can give them another minute or two and then,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, because I think Lauren said she was going to come on. I hope she will. And do you know who else? We don't know actually who signed up, correct?
I don't know who. I'm sure Arnie has access to the list, I don't-
Okay,
but I don't know who else.
yeah, okay, all right. Well, we can just.
Erica, did you get your cloth yet?
I did.
Oh, good.
I
can't
did.
See everybody's.
Oh, it's upstairs. Lenny's in his class upstairs, so I don't want to interrupt, but yeah.
I can't wait to
I'll
see.
send you a
every-
picture. I'll send you a picture.
Yeah,
I'll send you a picture.
we can see from your nose up. Can you tilt
Yeah.
your camera
Because
down?
I'm sitting low. That's what it is. I'm sitting low.
Oh, that's much better.
Better, yeah.
Now we can see your smile.
I know. There you go.
Excellent. I happened to be in Florida a couple of weeks ago, and there was in Winter Haven, there's this absolutely beautiful quilt store. And I went in and I was not sure what cloth I wanted to put with the other two cloths that I had. And they had just gorgeous stuff. So I'll show it to you tonight. And it has such a lovely, it drapes well on your hand, but it still has heaviness.
Body.
And it's 100% cotton, so it's really lovely to work with. And I was like, you know what? It's a little bit more expensive. It wasn't a lot more expensive, like $11.99 a yard.
That's about what it's going for, April. You know, if you go
Yeah.
online, it's very, or Etsy too. I've been on it. I go all over and gee, we used to have some nice quilt shops here. Flying Geese, remember Flying Geese?
Yes, yes, I love
And,
them. The only one left really is the Ladybug one.
have you been in there? Quilt Bug, you mean?
Quilt Bug, that's
Quilt
right.
Bug, have you been in?
I haven't been
In
in
a while.
since the pandemic started.
Yeah,
But I used to go in there fairly regularly, and I like their cloth. But I do go online because I just like variety, and
I know, it's not a lot of going on here, I know.
Yeah. And anytime they put anything on sale at Joann's, it's their cheapest cloth. And it just,
Joanne really has gone down, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to get some gorgeous stuff there, really
Yeah.
beautiful stuff.
you have to really go to their premier line to
Yeah,
get the good stuff.
quality.
Oh, somebody's coming.
Oh, good.
Eileen. Oh, good.
Don't see them.
Oh, Eileen, nice.
Buddy.
Hi, Eileen.
Hi, Eileen, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, sweetheart.
Were you able to find some cloth, Eileen?
So basically what I did is I had a bunch of material. I just dug through and found some, and I just had to pick up a coordinating one for the border.
Great.
Yeah.
Using up the stash is always good.
I was just getting ready to donate it all. I'm like, oh, I can use this.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh, excellent. We're just waiting a couple of minutes. I thought there were 10 people signed up, or maybe more. I think I was the last one to sign up, but I'm not positive. So we're just waiting for a few more minutes to make sure people can get in.
I appreciate you doing this. I got to tell you, it's like to drag the sewing machine out. It's just,
Well, you see, I took away a bedroom in my house, and it's a sewing room, and the sewing machines
It's there.
stay set up all the time.
good
And
for you.
the cutting table and all of that. And it's not very big, but it's very functional.
Good for you.
Because I know what you mean. I hate
It's half the battle.
putting things away, bringing it back together. Yeah. Not worthwhile.
Figure out how to.
There we go. Well, Ellen, it's 5 after. Should we start?
I think so.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming. And I hope you all got the instructions that came with your registration for the Table Runner project. Just a thought about this. I really didn't know what level we were going to have in terms of people's sewing skills. So some of this may be a little bit basic, some of it may be a little bit tough. I'm not quite sure. In the areas where I thought it might be tough, I got you a couple of YouTube
These are
links.
very nice, yeah. They're very.
Yeah, they're really well done, and
Yes, they really are.
I've been trying very hard to find things that illustrate it so you can go back and look at it again and again as you're doing it. So that's kind of a nice thing to, for those. For the first session, my goal is to get us all the way through getting the pieces cut and assembled into the top. And then in 2 weeks, after y'all have had an opportunity to do that, we'll come back and we'll put the quilt sandwich together with the batting inside and the backing, and learn how to make the binding and put that on. And I'm kind of thinking that it might be fun to either get together as a group and show each other what we've made. And maybe even we could display them in the cabinet there at Temple, so people could see what we do at Sisterhood. And it would be kind of I think a fun thing to just see the variety, because there's always variety between every single sewer. So very, very fun thing to do, I think. Okay, Ellen Dashu looks like she's getting on too.
Oh, it's Lauren Savage.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Lauren.
Oh, hi, Lauren. Welcome.
Hi.
We're just getting started. So what I did was take the instructions and I tried to go through stepwise and create a demonstration piece for each one of those. This morning I had the brilliant idea that we probably should take pictures of those rather than hold them up to the camera, and run that into a PowerPoint. So I'm going to share my screen and my PowerPoint with you. You won't see my face, but you will see my demonstration pieces. And if you have questions at all, don't be afraid to speak up and just ask them as we go. And I think that the one thing I would like to do is just go through and ask each of you what kind of skill level you think that you have. I'll start with, I think I've been doing it a long time, but I think I'm still at an advanced beginner level. There's way more stuff to learn that I don't know. How about you, Ellen?
I'm a beginner. I'm a preemie.
Yeah. Okay. Elaine.
Yeah, I would say I'm maybe an advanced beginner. I've done a bunch of baby quilts, table runners, placemats, stuff like that. Nothing huge, but I always send it out to be professionally quilted at the end.
Mhm.
That's an expense I'd like to try to not do anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tougher with a home machine. We
Yeah.
really need that long arm quilting machine to have enough space to do that. But there are some good, I can talk a little bit about ruler quilting and that kind of stuff that might be of interest. How about you, Erica?
Probably advanced beginner. I've done
Okay.
quilts and pillows and,
Great.
yeah.
And Eileen?
I've done pillows and balances. I actually did one t-shirt quilt for my daughter, but that was with a lot of guidance and a lot of help. And again, I didn't do any of the finishing. I sewed the blocks together and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, those can be tricky too. It's not always easy. And how about you, Lauren?
Okay, I am a total beginner.
Okay.
And although I've done a couple of things, I've done it with a friend of mine who is an expert quilter, and
Uh-huh.
she's kind of guided me through each step of the way. And actually, my plan is to do the same thing with this, because I don't have the kind of machine. I mean, I have a very simple machine. So I've done things at her house, and she's got all the cutting materials. She has all that stuff. I don't have any of that. So my plan is not to be doing it along with you, but I'm going to watch for a while and then I'll come back in a couple of weeks, and I'm hoping that she and I will have a chance to get together and do some of the beginning parts of it.
Sure.
So that's the plan. So if you see me cut out in a little while, it's not a personal thing. It's just that I'm not going to be doing it with you, but I did want to see how
Yeah.
it was set up.
I'm going to walk us through where I'm not going to be actually sewing here today. I'm going to walk us through the different steps. And so then everybody gets to go off and do their own thing. And hopefully you'll have some successes with that. If you have questions, don't be afraid to email me within the next 2 weeks as you're working on this before we get back together. I'd be happy to, talk with you and help you that way. I was saying, I think right before you came, that I thought it would be really interesting if maybe at the end we could get together in person and show each other our handiwork and maybe display it in the case there at Temple for folks to see what Sisterhood's been doing with quilting. So all these levels are just fine. Just so you know, I have a Bernina sewing machine, which is supposed to be a fancy, but it's 18 years old. And so it doesn't have a lot of fancy on it. I do most of my sewing with an $89 Walmart Brother machine, and even the quilting portion. The one difficult part with mine is, those little teeth on the bottom, the feed dogs that pull your cloth through. Some machines you can lower those. On my Bernina, I can lower those so that I can move the thing around without having those teeth grab when I'm quilting. My $89 Brother machine does not have that ability, so I can only do straight line quilting with that. Excuse me, but it's possible, and that's what I'm going to use on this particular, because my Bernina is in the shop. I was not nice to it. So I'm going to, bear with me, I'm going to run my PowerPoint at this point in time, and hopefully we'll get to see how each of these steps goes. As I say, if you have questions, just chime in as we go. First, I have to figure out how to share my screen. Share screen. That's what I want. Can you see?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to the top of this. That's where we're going to end up. So let me start at the beginning.
That is beautiful.
I'm hoping so. I'll tell you where I didn't do good things, and you'll then be able to see them. Slideshow, there it is. And okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is get our dark and our light. This is the dark cloth and the light cloth next to each other are what give you the contrast so that your pinwheel is going to look like a pinwheel. If I went, this is the back side of my cloth, but if I went with, say, this dark blue and a black, my pinwheel wouldn't show up nearly as well. So what I've done on this one is I'm using this blue material as my dark, and I've got a white on white as the light. And I pin them together, and you can see that now begins where I'm not anything more than advanced beginner. You can see along the bottom, the white is peeking out and around the sides, and that's due to inaccuracy in cutting. These are about 5-inch squares, but I cut a whole bunch of them in a stack. And if you do that with your rotary cutter, it's going to, the deeper into the stack you go, the more there's just a little slippage. It doesn't really harm things much, and it makes it a whole heck of a lot faster. And I have arthritis in my hands, so cutting each square out with scissors is a no-no. So I pin them together, and then we're going to make the pinwheel. This is the link that I gave you for YouTube, and I'll just run that quickly. So if you hadn't gotten a chance to see the whole thing, it's short and sweet, and I really like it. And these things she's flicking, those are called charm packs. You can buy packs of 5-inch squares. see hers doesn't really have the contrast we would like.
It was right side together, right, April?
Yes. Those have much better contrast. Okay, so that's the process where I'm going to take you through now to make the square. So you can see in this block, I had the 5-inch squares, right sides together and pinned, and then around the edges I've sewn, and you notice that I just use white thread. Most of the time in quilting, you don't need a variety of colors of thread. White will work. So I used a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. And I don't know what happened over here on the right-hand corner, but it's a little wiggly. No problem. Once you iron that out, it's not a problem at all. Next, we're going to cut with the rotary cutter. If you've got access to a rotary cutter, you're going to cut from corner to corner in both directions. If you don't have a rotary cutter, take a ruler and a piece of chalk and make your lines in that X and use your scissors to cut on the line. Either way works. And that's going to give us 4 of these triangular pieces. Next, we want to press these open so that this fold, you can see the fold at the top or the stitching at the top. We want to press the dark cloth toward that stitching line. That way, when you flip it all over, the dark material will be covering where the stitching, the 2 layers of stitching came together, and it won't show through your light as much. That's hard to explain. I could show you in 3 seconds, but that's hard to explain. So here I've done the pressing, and you can see that the stitching line is on the white and the cloth is folded over toward the dark. Now, if any of you have tried this already, you have little dog ears at that top left and bottom right corner. You're going to trim those off. I don't know that I said that in the directions, but I trim those off because I'm dyslexic and it keeps drawing my eye that way and it screws me up. Probably makes it a little bit easier for piecing them together later too.
April, I'm confused about what you're talking about trimming there. I'm not understanding that.
Can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Okay, right here, there would have been a little bit more of a triangle coming down like that. And up here, there'd be a little more of a triangle like that. And all I did was take my ruler and cutter and whoops, back. Hang on. And I just hacked those edges off. Okay.
So that was already trimmed, what you just showed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I went in and I trimmed this off right here. And I went in and I rather badly trimmed this off as
Okay.
it's as straight as I would like. And I would do that with each of the 4 squares that you get. That will just make it a little bit easier later on when you're trying to match them up to sew them together. So when you're done with these 4 triangles, you've pressed them open. So now they're called half squares because they're 2 different colors in a diagonal pattern. So this is called a half square. And so we're going to end up with 4 of these. The next thing you need to do is put these 4 on your table and set up your pinwheel. The lady in the video kind of twisted things with her hand like that, and I don't know what that was about, but at any rate, I turn all of mine over, and I want to encourage you to do it the same way every time. If you want all of your pinwheels to be going in the same direction when we get it all sewn together, you want to use the same process each time. So let's go to the next slide, and you'll see I've got one where I did it correctly and one where I went oops and didn't do it correctly. I'm not consistent. So we've taken 2 of the 4 half squares and put them together, and you want the points, the dark points, to come to the center. And when you're putting things together, you're going to do light, dark, light, dark. So we've got square 1 and square 2. Now, right now they're facing up at us, but we need to sew them together. So we're going to take this one on the top and lay it right over on top of this one on the bottom. And you'll end up with this blue face down on this white, and this white face down on this blue. And we'll stitch right along the top here. So there is what we've done. We stitched right along that top line, and now they're opened up, and we've got the blue, the white, the blue, the white. Important to do that, because if you get those squares mixed up, you'll end up with a lovely diamond, and that could be a pattern if you want it, but it won't be a pinwheel. So important to kind of lay it out and do it one step at a time. So now we did, up here was number 1. We sewed number 1 to number 2. We sewed number 3 to number 4. And then we're going to sew the 1-2 piece to the 3-4 piece right down the middle. And we did that in this already. So that makes your pinwheel. And you can see it doesn't have to be perfect. My point doesn't come in all the way. In the long run, if you pick out beautiful fabrics, nobody's going to notice. And as I mentioned earlier today, we're not entering this in a contest, and we're going to put this on the table at Passover, and people are going to spill wine on it. So it's okay. Don't fret over those kind of things. It just makes it too, I don't know, nerve-wracking. And I don't want anybody to be like that, you know, tense about that kind of stuff, especially the first time.
April, what's the approximate size of that? Because I'm not doing a table runner. I'm going to do more like placemat size. I want to put it on furniture to protect furniture.
Right.
So using that number of pieces, like what is the approximate size of that?
So when I did this, I don't have a ruler right here with me. When I did this, each one of these squares came out to be about 3 inches square. And then when you sew it all together like this and like that,
Like
that takes about 1/4 inch off. So on each, so instead of being a 6-inch square, it's about 5.5 inches square. Using that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And that the nice thing about this is you can adjust the size of your squares. If you go, oh my God, 5.5 inches, I have, you know, 20-inch long table that I want to cover. I'm going to have to make a ton of these. You don't have to. You can change your beginning square. Remember, this started with 5-inch squares. If you jumped it up to 10-inch squares, you would probably end up with maybe 8.5-inch squares, which would be much larger. I just talked to a friend who's a very good sewer, but she hadn't thought about this, and she has to do a 12-inch square. So I told her if she started out with 13-inch squares, that by the time we got the sewing done, she should probably end up with about a 12-inch square, or enough that she could cut it down to a 12-inch square. So you can really vary the size of the squares that you make. You know, you could conceivably have one, say, placemat that's just a square with no borders or anything. You could go that route if you wanted to. So there's lots of things we can do with it. And certainly if I were going to make this into a pot holder, I'd probably do like a 10-inch square to start, and that would be it. It would be a square, 1 pinwheel pot holder. One other word too, if people are interested in using pot holders, the stuff, or making pot holders, The stuff you put inside, you want to be sure that you use a cotton batting. And then there's also something called thermolam, I believe is the term for it. It looks like it's got almost an aluminum foil backing to it. That's really to protect your hand. That foil goes in next to your batting. So you have cotton pieced, your pinwheel, then you have batting, then you have the thermolam, then you have your backing cotton. So it's really 4 layers thick if you're making a pot holder. But for this, we're only going to be using the cotton, the batting in between, since we're not holding on to anything hot with it. So for this one, just to recap, we sewed 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and then this whole 1, 2 rectangle to this whole 3, 4 rectangle. And that's how we got our square. This is a good time to do squaring up. And squaring up just means that if you take a look at my sewing here, I got a little edge that sticks up here, another little edge that sticks up down there. And that's probably due to some stretching as I was sewing along and some inaccuracies in my cutting. So what I try to do is go in and kind of go equal distant from the center out and go as far as I can to make the square. Like I couldn't go any farther up here because I'm out of cloth. But over here, somehow that got wonky. So if I line my ruler up with here, I can cut straight across this line and everything there would then be straight. And I'll measure from there down to the center and then try to make the same measurement from here to here. And hopefully I've left myself enough cloth so that I could then cut across this bottom line and get rid of that funky edge. And then the same thing here, measure out from the center here, measure out from the center here, and just kind of square it up. Now on my cutting mat, I have 1-inch boxes. So very often I don't use a ruler to measure that. I lay the square on the 1-inch boxes, making sure that the center is on a box. And I just count out how many squares left and right, up and down. And I go do it that way and lay my ruler down and zip across it. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. You may not have left yourself enough. Had I gone any farther here, because that's really about 1/8 of an inch. Had I gone any farther in here, I couldn't make this square the same size as all the other squares, and I might have to remake the square. But in this case, it's small enough, and I've enlarged this, but it's small enough to be able to trim it off in this way and still use it. So that's called squaring up. You can do that. The temptation is to do it every time you get to a square, like our little half squares here. I don't do it then because I want as much cloth left over as possible. And I only want to cut it off maybe once, at the very most twice, because every time we trim, of course, it gets smaller and smaller. So squaring up is something I do just to make it easier in the next step for matching the edges of the squares with the sashing and the borders. People have questions about that? It's kind of a weird thing to think about, but think about your best square and fit it in what you made. It's really what happens. Okay. So remember I talked about being consistent in the way you lay out your squares. Well, here I am. I don't know what I was smoking when I was doing that. Because it's not right in any way, shape, or form. Here's that wonky edge, and the pinwheel, if you follow my arrows, is where the dark blue goes. The pinwheels are going left. On this one, it matches much better, and the pinwheels are going all right. Now, it's okay if you do that and you want to have every other one of your squares go in a different direction. That's a really nice kind of serendipitous table runner too. But if you were intending for all of your squares to go in the same direction, you need to go and make another square in the format that you wanted to use, because there's no way to turn this one to ever make it line up correctly. And you can see if you put these edges together, you have this lovely diamond shape in the middle, and that's not a pinwheel, and that's what the eye will see. So just an example of how dyslexic people work. It just did not go for me that day, and I ended up having to go do it all over again. So take a look at your squares before you decide to move on to adding the sashing, and that's where we're headed next. The sashing is this material that's going to be in between the squares. I chose, this is the beautiful blue cloth that I found when I was in Florida. And it just picked up such nice colors of the blues in my pinwheel cloth that I really wanted to use it, but it still mostly has a white background. So I thought that would make a nice field. And you can measure across your square and then go cut a strip that long by 2.5 inches wide. I don't trust myself. Each one of my squares is a little bit different. So I lay each square down. I cut a strip 2.5 inches wide all the way across the bolt of fabric that I have. And then I take each square and I lay it down to that, and I mark off each side and cut them individually. I just find for me that works the best, but you can do whatever works best for you. If you're very meticulous in your cutting, you can just measure across, measure your strip, and go to it. I'm not there yet. Maybe someday. So then what we're going to do is, after you've sewn, I've changed the orientation here first. I want to tell you, we were going sideways with things, and now I've got it vertical on you. So here's our pinwheel. We added our sashing strip to the top. And then this square has a sashing strip added to the top, and the same for each of the 4 squares with a sashing strip on the top. And then one more, and I didn't do a separate one of those, you're going to do one more sashing strip to add to the bottom of your 4th pinwheel, so that you've got sashing, pinwheel, sashing, pinwheel, sashing, pinwheel, sashing. So 4 pinwheels, 5 sashing. And I know the pattern, I don't know why I disregarded that, but the pattern tells you to cut out enough squares, tells you to cut out 8 dark and 8 light. You have enough to make 8 pinwheels. So you could make another row if you want to. I didn't do that in mine. I don't know why. I just thought I knew what I was doing, I guess, and didn't read the directions. But in any case, on my table, it's just going to have a strip of pinwheels down the middle of the table runner, which is what I would like to do. Ellen had worked on hers, and I noticed it when you showed yours, Ellen, and you might want to show that again after I stop sharing here. Let's see if I can escape and stop share. If you want to hold yours up, Ellen, people will see your.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow.
I think what happened, the person that I work with interpreted the directions differently, and then showed me a different way to do it, but it comes out, I guess, similar. So.
Yes. And if you can see on Ellen, she's got them side by side all the way down. This is all sashing. This is all sashing, and in between is all sashing.
Right.
You can also do that. The directions give you enough fabric and squares to be able to do that. I just screwed up.
April, can I ask you a question? So for like a placemat size thing, that's a lot of sashing and a lot of border on the outside, wouldn't you say?
It could be, yes.
So what, do you have any suggestions for how to make it more proportionate?
You can add more borders to your one square. If you want to do one, you know, a strip of squares like mine has been doing. And then you will have your sashing in the middle of them and a strip of sashing down the side. And then you can add another border, another pattern of cloth or some of the same cloth just on the outside. And I think that's probably what I'm going to do with mine. So when I come back for the second session, I'll probably have another color on the outside.
You can do the sashing that goes in between the same as the border on the outside though.
Yes, yeah. Let me go back to sharing my screen and I'll show you my beginning picture again. Share. If I go back to my, here's the last,
Okay, yeah.
so you can see, I just have a strip of squares. My sashing is in the middle here between these. I've got a piece up here and a piece down there. And then I did a long border, the whole length of everything, and another long border over here. Now, as I'm looking at that, it looks to me a little busy. And so I think what I want to do is cut this sashing down. This is a 4-inch, I'm sorry, this is a border. This 4-inch is a 4-inch border. These are only 2.5. So in this direction. So I think I'm going to cut this down to 2.5 inches wide and then add on a more plain fabric, maybe the white here, maybe something else I haven't figured out yet. But I think it will be less visually busy and will shrink down the amount of activity going on here to something that's more pleasing to the eye. And then I suspect I'm going to then finish with the binding of this dark material so that it brings you to the outer edge of the piece, brings your eye to the outer edge. So I'm thinking about how to do that. I like this cloth, but this is really a lot of it. So I got to figure it out. I'm trying to remember where we were. Oh, okay, so I think we were there. Yeah. So this is the last piece in my PowerPoint. And so this really gets your pinwheels going. You can have sashing between the pinwheels. As you saw in the YouTube, she had a whole quilt top at the end that they sort of spread out, and there was no sashing between the pinwheels. So you could do that as well. If you'd like those together and you don't want any intervening cloth, you could do a more plain. I could have done just a plain white in between so that, and around it, that would make the pinwheels stand out even more. And so there's a lot of different choices you can make to sort of make things stand out. I have, next time we come together, I do have a, one of these that I made, and instead of putting the pinwheels this way, I set them what's called on point. And that means that the point of the pinwheel is pointing to the edge this way. And that also means that you have to cut triangles and put in between them rather than these straight bars, because they'll join point to point to point. And so you might want to try that as well. That one's a little bit more advanced, but it's fun, and I like the way that it turns out in the end as well. So that's kind of where I wanted to go in this first session. Are there questions about any of this?
I actually have, I'm sorry to ask all these questions, but I want to get it right. So you had talked about way back sewing the tops of the pinwheels together. Which is the top? Yeah, I wasn't clear which.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
If you have done all of your pinwheels so that they rotate in the same direction, doesn't matter which side you use, because they'll always be looking like they rotate in the same direction. If you haven't done that and you've got 2 pinwheels that rotate in one direction and 2 that rotate in the other, for visual balance on your table runner or your placemat, you may want to stagger those, one that rotates left, one that rotates right. And when you're doing that, you're going to need to be aware of where to sew that strip on and call it your top. And then be very strategic about sewing that strip on the top of the pinwheel that goes in the other direction. So when you sew those together, you got a pinwheel left, a pinwheel right. And I suspect I have another one that I was sewing together. Let me see if I can hold that up and see if you can see it. I did it on the day that I also made all those wonky things. So I don't know how well you can see this, but I have a right rotating, a left rotating, and a right rotating over here, if we go by these. So the next one I sew on is going to need to be down here, and it's going to need to be a right rotate, a left rotating. That means the blue will be pointing to the far edge, like this one. That will give me the visual variety of left, right for the rotation. Now, with this material in the middle that I've used for sashing, that really is pretty active, and it kind of catches your eye, and folks might not catch on that this is a left or right. But if I had done just white in between these squares, it would shout at you left, right, left, right. So then I really have to be very strategic in making sure I get them going in the right direction. I hope that's helpful and not more confusing. It's really
Thank
easy
you.
in person, yeah. Okay. Some of the other things that you want to kind of be a little bit careful with are trying to make that 1/4 inch seam. Really practice not looking at necessarily the needle, but looking at where your cloth is running. Most machines have a little 1/4 inch line, and it's usually right by the edge of the foot on the machine. Some machines have something called a 1/4 inch foot, which is lovely because it gives you what's called a scant 1/4 inch, which is really what you'd like. But for the most part, regular machines that you might have in your house don't have those. People buy those feet separately. And so practice with that. Try to get the edge of your material. Just watch that. Don't even bother to watch the needle. Just watch how your cloth passes under that foot and keep it even with the edge of your foot. And that will give you your 1/4 inch seam. That really makes life a lot easier and the outcome better in terms of not losing your points or having to trim it so much that now you're down to a 4 inch square instead of a 5.5 inch square, that kind of thing. I think the directions say it, but because it's cotton and because it's going to be used on the table or on an end table or that kind of thing, it's going to need to be washed occasionally. And so before you do any cutting, you definitely want to wash it in the washer with the way you usually wash your clothes, and wash the material and then throw it in the dryer and dry it the way you would dry your clothes, and then take it out and iron it so that it's flat. It's cotton, it's going to wrinkle like crazy, but iron it flat. And I usually iron in a fold. I like to cut more thicknesses, 2 or 3 thicknesses at once. So I have a small cutting table, so I have to fold it. I iron that in, and that helps me keep kind of the finished edges together and all of that. So I get a more accurate cut. I'm still not really real accurate, but some is better than none, I guess. Those are two things I think are really important. As long as you're doing your best to keep that 1/4 inch seam allowance and you're doing your best to cut as straight and square as possible, then it's going to come out and be recognizable and, you know, be decorative. And, you know, Ellen said she was feeling like this was a big jump for her the first time around, and you saw it, it came out, it looks beautiful. You know, I wouldn't think that you hadn't ever done anything like that before by looking at that, for sure. So I really think that it can come out and be very useful and very pretty, and it doesn't have to be perfect, for sure. I know that the quilters in Amish country have a saying that no person, no human being is perfect. And if they're afraid that they might have done everything exact and perfect, they will intentionally put a mistake in their quilt so as not to offend their God. So I'm thinking I'm never going to have to do that intentionally. It seems to happen on my own. But, you know, we're human, and I think that's what makes these things so much fun, is we're not being judged. This is just to learn something new. I don't want anybody to freak out. It's not matching. It doesn't work. I've been there, and it makes it not fun, and I don't want to do that. I want it to be fun for you, and I want you to be able to show it to your friends. Mine is going on the Passover table, whether it comes out nicely, whether it has binding on the edge yet or not. It's going there anyway, and people can ooh and ah later. But you know, it just makes it kind of my Passover table then. So I really enjoy doing these kinds of things for that reason. Do you feel confident that you can do this and that you understand the instructions? And again, the decision, I may go back now in realizing my mistake. I may go back and make one that looks more like Ellen's and use up the other 8, although I've already cut out about a bazillion of these to make the different pieces that I showed you. So I'll end up with 7 of these, I think, by the time I'm done. But I really like the side-by-side ones. So I think I may go back and try one of those too. And when we get together again, I will show you the On Point one. And if people want to do that, we could get together over the summer and do that. And I'd be happy to work with people on that. I always kind of like the On Point version better than the square version. I don't know why. It's a little bit tougher, but I tend to like to do those. So, well, that went a lot easier than I thought it was going to.
It was great. It was really great. Very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Rachel.
All goes
Excellent,
so.
really excellent.
I'm really hopeful that, you know, when we get back together, we can, we'll all have a top pretty much ready to go, so that then we can make the quilt sandwich, and I can show you a little bit about quilting. I'll be doing mostly straight line quilting. I know I wondered where Arnie got that picture that he sent out with the information. There was a pinwheel on it, and the white part of the pinwheel was quilted in little curves, which I thought was lovely, and I can't do with my machine that will only let me go straight. So I'll have to get my other machine out of Gloversville and get it back here so I could try some of those things. I also have a whole ton of different kinds of rulers for quilting. And I can just tell you a little bit about that now, and you can think about it. The rulers that I have are acrylic rulers. They're about a 1/4 inch thick or so, a little bit thicker than your pressure foot on your machine. And what you end up doing is you lay the ruler down. It has a shape it's cut into a shape. And you use your machine to follow along the edge of the ruler. You put your press your foot next to it and follow along the edge of that ruler to get circles or squiggly lines or waves, whatever you'd like to do. In order to do that, you need to have a machine where you can drop the feed dogs so that you're free to do this free motion with your hands. If you do have that and you do want to do that, I can certainly get together with people and who are interested and show them that. That's something I think we should, if people want to do that, we should get together in person to do. And we can do it. I mean, there's 5 of us here now. We could do that together in a group at the temple, I'm sure, one afternoon or one evening or whatever, and let everybody practice with the rulers. And then you can decide if that's the way you want to quilt it. Quilting tends to be, it can be very easy and straight. You can think about following the lines of your quilt, or it can be kind of freehand and just every which way you want to go, or you can use these rulers and follow the rulers to make some sort of a pattern. There are lots of different things, ways to handle that. So you can think about that, and then next time around we'll decide what we want to do, and if anybody's interested in trying some of the rulers.
To me, that just sounds flat out scary. Like I can see putting this all together and going, wow, this is really cool, and then quilt and like destroy the entire thing. Woo.
We have to learn to be brave when we're quilting. And as I say, you know, after umpteen quilt demonstration pieces, I've got a whole bunch of them, so we can practice on that. And the other thing I have is a really old quilt that I bought at a cheap store, and most of the quilting has come out of it. And I keep saying, you know, I really want to use that to practice my free motion quilting. And it's still folded up in a bag, which I made, a beach bag, which I made since I said I wanted to practice that. I went on and I've been making handbags and beach bags and whatnot. And, it got folded up and put in there, and I still haven't practiced. So we can cut that thing up and you can practice on that. So, you know, lots of different ways to do it. So, well, it's just about 8 o'clock. And if nobody has any other questions, I'll let you go and enjoy your sewing, and don't be afraid to email or call me. I will, you know, try to be around and get back to you and answer your questions. And hopefully this will be a fruitful process and one that you enjoy.
Wonderful. Okay. I
Thank
think
you
we
so
can
much, April.
let's stop our recording, right, April? And hope that it goes to the cloud.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you again.